speaking of Brexit and Boris Johnson, the Conservative Party, is the plan for Scotland to still hold a referendum on independence next year?
Yes, I was re-elected as First Minister around about this time last year, and was re-elected on a very firm mandate to offer people in Scotland that choice. We are currently working on the plans for that, both around process of that, but more importantly perhaps on the substance. The world's changed quite markedly in many respects since 2014, so making sure that we put forward the prospectus, the case for independence that takes account of those changes is important, and work on that is underway.
The situation right now that maybe the timing isn't right, or do you still feel the timing of next year is right given the war in Ukraine?
I believe that with all of the challenges that rightly you're raising with me there, it's all the more important that Scotland plays its full part in trying to, albeit a small country, trying to be a constructive voice in the world and trying to play our part in finding the solutions to the challenges the world faces, and independence better equips us to do that. And in NATO, and we've seen over the past weeks why that is so about my very strong view, reinforced by the situation in Ukraine, that an independent Scotland would be part of NATO to make sure that we were playing our part in the wider security of our neighbourhood and the allies and friends around us. So, the wider security of our neighbourhood and the allies and friends at its heart. The Scottish independence movement is an internationalist project. It's not about turning away from the world. It's not about separation. It's about how do we ensure that Scotland, a country with historic traditions of being a force in the world, can play that positive force in the world in the future.
On the NATO, wanting to join NATO, that there could be problems in doing so, and what that would mean.
Historically, traditionally, we'd been opposed to NATO membership for an independent Scotland, and then in 2012 changed that, but did so quite narrowly. Now, I'm not aware of there having been recent opinion polling in Scotland on NATO membership, but I strongly suspect that, a bit like Finland and Sweden, we would now find overwhelming support in Scotland for the notion that should Scotland become independent, it should be part of NATO, because Scotland's geographic position, a key part of the North Atlantic, means that it would be essential for our security, but also the principal way in which Scotland could contribute to the wider security of our region. This is something we don't always manage to explain properly to people overseas. At its heart, imagine Scotland not being part of the NATO alliance, I think would be detrimental both to Scotland and to the alliance itself. So I am, while obviously there would be processes after Scotland becoming independent to accede to membership, I am very confident that it would be seen as in very much the mutual benefit of Scotland and the rest of NATO that we were a full and fully participating and constructive part.
Scotland, just becoming independent, joins NATO. What would his approach be different from Westminster's approach?
An independent Scotland's closest friend, ally and neighbour is always going to be the rest of the UK, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. So the core part of our defence and security would be a good relationship with the rest of the UK, and our defence and security interests, obviously, we share an island with England, would be very, very closely aligned. Building on that, I think the cornerstones for an independent Scotland's security would be membership of the EU and membership of NATO. Independent Scotland's security would be membership of the EU and membership of NATO. On Ukraine, right now, I don't agree with Boris Johnson on very much, as we've reflected on in the earlier part of the interview, but my government are fully supportive of the actions that Boris Johnson and his government have taken, the severity of the sanctions, the provision of military aid to Ukraine, and we stand full square with the UK, with the EU and with other countries, the US included, in our condemnation of Putin's actions and our desire to see him isolated and held to account for what he's done. Me to talk about nuclear weapons as opposed to nuclear power. I thought that might be what you were going to come on. My party's got a long-standing policy of opposing nuclear weapons in principle, as well as for practical and ethical reasons. We would not wish to continue to host nuclear weapons should Scotland become independent, but there would be a need to have a very responsible negotiation with the UK, who are the the holders of that Trident nuclear system to make sure that it could safely be removed from Scotland, and nobody would want to be irresponsible in the timescales that we set for that.
It's been very lovely.
Yeah.
I will agree with that.
I suspect it's not as lovely back at home.